the Trump administration is still attempting to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And the way that they're doing it is by taking this case to the Supreme Court, which makes me worry because while the Supreme Court has ruled the right way on a few issues recently, when it comes to corporate power, when it comes to private insurers, it's much more likely that the conservative judges are going to side with the Trump administration. Now, that's my prediction, but we'll see how this plays out. The Supreme Court is likely to hear this case in the fall. Now, what is the Trump administration alleging in this case? Well, in a filing with the US Supreme Court, the Trump administration argued that the Affordable Care Act in its entirety is illegal because Congress eliminated the individual tax penalty for failing to purchase medical insurance. Now, that was the government mandate that was effectively repealed. Now, Solicitor General Noel Francisco, the government's chief advocate before the Supreme Court, said in a brief that the other provisions of Obamacare are impossible to separate from the individual mandate, and that, quote, it necessarily follows that the rest of the ACA must also fall. So again, I'm genuinely worried about how the Supreme Court will rule on this. I think it's unbelievably cruel and callous to continue pushing for the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, knowing full well that so many Americans have lost their employer-provided health insurance because of this pandemic and because of layoffs. And since the pandemic began, 500,000 Americans who lost their jobs and their health insurance as a result of losing their jobs have relied on Obamacare to get healthcare coverage. If they are successful in repealing the Affordable Care Act, it is going to be a complete nightmare for so many Americans, including people who have tested positive for COVID-19, which can be considered a pre-existing condition if the bill is, or I should say the law is actually repealed. Then healthcare providers can go ahead and deny you if you have a so-called pre-existing condition.
In the middle of the biggest pandemic of our lifetimes, they would throw over 20 million people off of their health insurance. It's so callous, so insane. So, okay, then Dana Perino goes on Fox News. Of course, she used to work for Bush as a Republican. And she says, I don't know why the Trump administration is insisting on this in the middle of this pandemic. It's not good politics. First of all, also not good for humanity and people staying alive. But wait a minute, why don't you think it's good politics? I thought all of you Republicans hated the Affordable Care Act and said we would be healthier without it. Well, you know that's not true. That's why you're saying it. You know that it would kick 20 million people off of health insurance. And one of the other things that the Trump administration is arguing for in court is to get rid of coverage for pre-existing conditions. So when Trump and other Republicans say, oh, no, we would protect people with pre-existing conditions, it is an unmitigated lie. They're in court legally arguing that they should kill that provision. So, and by the way, every reporter in the country that ever covers that story should say Trump and all the Republican senators are lying. They are in favor of a law that would get rid of coverage for pre-existing conditions. So that's just a fact. It's not a debate, it's not an opinion, it's a fact. So there they are, and they want to get rid of it. The Affordable Care Act has its issues. It left the insurance companies in charge, and they've increased their premiums ever since, just like we told you. And so the progressive position was clearly a better one. In the midst of this pandemic, people are wondering, oh my God, am I gonna be covered if I get COVID-19? You should be worried if you're gonna be covered if you get any disease, or if it's gonna bankrupt you, or if you're gonna die. That's why we should have Medicare for all. But does that mean I would take away Affordable Care Act and take away insurance from all those people in the middle of this pandemic? Of course not. What kind of monster would do that? Correct answer, not just Donald Trump. Every elected Republican in the country agrees with that. So, or if you don't believe me, ask them. Maybe you'll find 2 or 3. But at the national level, every single one of them says, take away that insurance from tens of millions of Americans and make sure they're not covered for pre-existing conditions.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that All you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.